It is a great Monday down in Greenville, South Carolina. I hope everybody had a great Passover or Easter or however you celebrate. If nothing else, it's a wonderful spring holiday. And I've certainly had a nice family time together, which I was very much appreciative, especially as compared to this time last year. So I am talking to Sarah Pastula. And I don't think I quite got that right, Sarah. How do I pronounce it right? Remind me again.
Close, Pastula.
Pastula. I think I put an extra syllable in there.
It's the funnest I've ever heard anyone pronounce it.
Well, my audience is used to it. Unfortunately, that's a bad habit of mine, but I'm getting better. I'm working on it. So Sarah is with Cabot Cheese, and she's been with them for over a half dozen years, and she is a cheese whiz, no pun intended. And so we are brainstorming about a beer and cheese pairing event we've got coming up. So one of the things we were talking about, and if anybody's got any comments, please put those in the chat, was some of the farmhouse cheeses. Now, Sarah, you were saying that there's some unique cultures there with the farmhouse cheeses.
Absolutely. So, cheddar cheese, the base ingredient there is milk. You're going to take that milk, and what you're going to add to it is a culture and a rennet. So your rennet is an enzyme that's going to create a coagulation to happen in the milk once it's cooked. And then your culture is a bacteria. So it's going to be specific to cheddar cheese, but you can have different variations of it. So those different variations are going to contribute to different undertones in the cheddar. Okay.
So what is it? Is it just the different bacteria that gives you the different farmhouse flavors?
It is. So again, that's going to be the real difference in those particular cheddars is, and farmhouse is one variation in our legacy collection. So there are 4 of them. So that farmhouse cheddar is going to have its own specific starter culture added to it. There are other variations that can come into a cheddar as far as, different variations in the milk. We are making cheese from milk that comes from our 800 farm families all over the Northeast here. And, when a cow is in a different place, it's eating different things. So it'll have different notes to its milk. Weather can come into play. Up in the Northeast here, we're always having, crazy weather. So that can contribute to it. But the main difference in that line of cheese will be the starter culture.
So milk has a terroir to it?
It sure does.
I did not know that. I guess you have to travel around and try different milks to know that.
Absolutely. And when we get into it a little more, we had talked about that seriously sharp cheddar. Yep. And how it's considered a wild card cheese there. So we have, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We have cheese graters. So they're going to go through and test really every single batch of cheddar that we make. And they're going to define those different flavor profiles and texture profiles to each batch of cheddar cheese that we make. And those different tendencies are going to come from the milk.
You say cheese graters, you're talking about they get score them, not one of those things where you...
Correct.
Okay.
I have people say all the time, I want to grow up to be a cheese grater. Yeah. You think of like grating cheese.
Well, have you ever grated cheese before?
I haven't. Well, I guess depends on which kind of grating we're talking about, but Cabot always has an odd number of graters, and they're really honestly going to go through and, test every single individual batch. There's a tool that they use to pull a core out of a block of cheddar, and they'll take it and they'll taste it. They'll look at the texture of it, and determine how long they're going to age it for and what ultimately they're going to label and sell a batch of cheese as.
Well, so speaking of aging, can we touch on that a little bit? You said that we can age our own cheese successfully at home. Can you
Sure
speak to
can.
that briefly?
Yeah. So again, we make lots and lots and lots of, just regular cheddar cheese. It has the same milk, the same culture, the same rennet, the same amount of salt. It's, you'd think that it's going to be exactly the same, but different batches of cheese will age out because of those different tendencies in the milk. So the starting age range for a batch of Cabot cheddar is 2 months. That's the minimum amount of time that they're going to age their cheese for. So they make hundreds and thousands of pounds of cheese every single day. And then those blocks will go and sit. We have refrigerated warehouses. And those blocks will go and they'll sit for a minimum of 2 months. They get tested by the graders. And they could
This sounds like the Cheez-It commercials.
Yeah.
That's fairly representative.
It happens in real life.
Okay. All right.
So it can, the oldest cheese that we age is a 5-year cheddar.
Yep.
And but I mean, again, we sell and market cheese that's every age in between as well. So a fun way that you could age it yourself is by, getting a block of sharp cheddar. Every block is going to have a use by or a sell by date on it.
Right.
Okay. So if you were to take a block of sharp cheddar and just leave it in your refrigerator and let it go past its sell by, it's going to be an extra sharp. Okay. And it'll just keep getting older and sharper. So sharpness for a cheddar cheese is referring to like its flavor, its consistency. A sharper cheddar is going to have a stronger flavor profile. So it's getting bolder flavors. It develops what's called tyrosine in it. That's a very important word there. So they're kind of like little crunchy bits that develop in the cheese the older it's getting. A lot of people tend to think that they're salt crystals, but what they actually are, it's an amino acid that breaks down in the cheese the older it's getting. So it's just a natural occurrence. It happens when you use excellent milk to make excellent cheese. And it's delicious. It's so good.
So a lot of us age our beers. Certain beers will age well. So can I age any of your cheese? It almost sounds like I need to have a refrigerator where I'm aging these cheeses so they just get better like some of the beers.
You could. You absolutely could. What I wouldn't recommend to age is a jack cheese, because a jack cheese actually has a moisture added to it. So while the curds are in the finishing tables, they get showered just with a light mist. And that is going to create a lighter, spongier texture for those cheeses. So like a Colby Jack is very mild, it's very spongy, and it's not going to age out to be that 5-year-old delicious sharp cheddar with all those tyrosine crystals and crumbly texture because it has the moisture added to it. It's great for a grilled cheese, but
So if it says Jack cheese, is that what I'm saying? Don't age that?
Yeah.
I'm looking
so
for
that
the
could
word
be a
cheddar.
Yeah, it could be a Monterey, it could be a pepper jack, Colby Jack. Those are not going to age out. But if it's a sharp or even we have a mild, I think it says kid friendly on it. But those are just going to continue to age out and get older and better.
That's cool. Well, I'm going to start a stash in my cellar. Well, in my fridge,
I
I
have
guess.
one. Yes.
But that's a good question. We do cellar a lot of our beers, which is at like 50 degrees. Does it need to be at 40 degrees like a refrigerator?
Regular refrigeration is the best way to age it. It's different than serving it. You know, when you're serving a cheddar, room temperature is the best way to do that. When we do our delicious tasting in
Yep.
a week or so, we're going to want to recommend that people let it get to room temperature. You'll get a nicer slice and you'll really get all of the notes to it and everything. But yeah, refrigeration is the best way to store it. Keep as much air away from it as possible. Yeah.
Well, we ought to talk about a little bit of beer and the pairing. Do you
We
have a
should.
favorite pairing of beers
Oh,
and
oh
cheese?
gosh. Let me think here. So seriously sharp is our most popular cheese. Can't go wrong with it. I do love an IPA. You know, they both have pretty strong, bold flavors to them. And together, again, we had talked about earlier, you know, really elevating the palates there. I think those go excellent together. I don't know. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I kind of like malty beers.
Okay.
So I was trying to think what might do well with a barley wine because that's an aged beer.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's very malt forward, can be a little bit bitter, but I guess depending on the style that you like, I tend to like the less bitter ones.
Yeah.
Has a lot of like dark fruit characteristics, so there may be some raisiny characteristics. There may be should be some toffee characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think goes well with something like that? It may be a bit on the sweet side too.
So, I mean, I know in our pairings we had, and correct me if I'm steering wrong here, but like the pepper jack,
Yep,
and the stout that we had talked about, something that
those would be
has sort of a sweeter undertone to it. When you're a pairing that a lot of people don't usually go for or think of normally is actually chocolate with cheese and a spicy cheese like pepper jack. You know, that chocolatiness is going to kind of tone it down a little bit and not damper it completely. But that is a really interesting pairing that a lot of people don't usually think of.
yeah, I like that.
So, I mean, I think we should try it with some pepper jack.
Perfect. Well, do you have a favorite beer there in Vermont? I know we'll try and pick some that are widely distributed. We've talked about that. But is there one in Vermont, a brewery you like up there?
Um, well, Red Barn is pretty local to me. Have you heard of them at all? They're fairly
No, but
new.
I can't say that I know too many of the breweries in Vermont at all.
Okay. Well, it's they're kind of fun. You should Google them actually.
Okay.
They started just actually like a little ways down the road from my house in Danville, and they literally were a barn. So it was an old dairy barn, and they turned the milking parlor into a tasting room. And then further out into the barn was where they were brewing. So it was very interesting and so good. But
Well, this has been perfect here, Sarah. I think, and again, I don't have a way to exit except just to end our program, and we have a few people watching, and thank you for joining us in this pop-up event. Not only Sarah, but those of you that have joined in. Again, we're going to be focusing in on exactly what we want to do in our upcoming event, and I'll let everybody know. I haven't sent out the announcements yet. And again, most of you have my email address, so shoot me an email if you have a specific cheese question or specific thing. Sarah's been at this for quite a while, and so I think we'll have a real expert here to answer your questions. Sarah, as we wrap up, Is there kind of one thing you would like to say that you've maybe kind of enjoyed about pairing cheeses with either beer or other fine beverages? How would you sum it up a little bit?
I just think that pairings are so fun in any sense. And like I had said before, I love a good beverage. I love cheese. And really anytime you're going to pair something, you're just elevating each element that you're putting together. So I think it's so fun. You can't really go wrong. And take your favorite beer and try it with some different cheese and see what you think. Really take in all of the notes, and we're going to be doing that in a couple weeks, which I'm so excited for. But yeah, it's all about elevating the flavor and creating a great palate experience.
Well, great. I think there's nothing better than beard cheese. It just is, particularly cheddar. I just think cheddars work,
Particularly Cabot cheddar.
particularly Cabot cheddar. I look forward to learning a lot more about Cabot. So, thank you for your time. It looks like everything's good for our setup. When I click the end, our time together will be done. We'll continue to share some email. I'll share with you any questions the audience has and preferences. But I think our plan we're talking about 4 beers and 4 of your cheeses, and we're going to be tasting those. And then Sarah's going to be walking through the details of how the cheeses get the way they are. And I hope we'll learn a little bit more about aging the cheeses in the various cultures. Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate your time. Audience, thank you. We'll look forward to this event coming up just a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye.